RP fam, thank you guys so much for joining me for another video. In today's video, I am going over the top 32 options at the running back position. Gonna give you your RB1s, 2s, and some players to consider in your flexes as well. I want to give you all the information you need to make the best decisions possible. That way we can go out, crush our opponents, and take home that chip. To all of you visiting for the first time, so happy to have you guys along for the ride. Make sure you drop your questions and your comments down below. I love to be able to get back to you and help you out by talking back and forth. We make each other better. That is what it is all about. Relentless Press drops content Monday to Saturday. I do over 10 videos every single week. So make sure you like the video if you enjoy the content first and foremost, and then subscribe as well. We are going for our first 1,000 subscribers. If you have not done that yet, you can help us get there. To all of my current subscribers, thank you guys so much for all of your support thus far. I look forward greatly to continue to growing with you. With that done, let's hop into week 17, championship week's running back rankings. I suppose that it's fitting as we get into the win or go home game that at number 1 I have Christian McCaffrey. He scored in his 4th straight game against Washington, but he did break his 3-game top 5 streak as he struggled with just 58 yards total on 17 touches. I think he bounces back. He has week winning potential this week against the Raiders. They allow over 23 points a game to the position. At number 2 is Austin pound for pound Ekeler. He took over as the overall RB1 on the season with a 2-touchdown performance against Indianapolis. Now, I do not love this matchup with the Rams, but pound for pound continues to find a way to get it done. Even though he has just 24 receiving yards in his last 2, all I think that means is that the Chargers make a concerted effort to get him the ball in space in the Battle of LA. At number 3 is Saquon Barkley. He dominated the Vikings on Christmas Eve, breaking free for that 27-yard touchdown to tie the game late in the 4th quarter. He's now scored in 4 out of his last 5, and he's going to carry on that momentum against the Colts. They allow nearly 24 points a game to the position, 5th most in the league. Flying way up my rankings and probably heavily above consensus. At number 4 is Travis Etienne Jr. He's in line for a monster performance here after tallying 46 touches over his last 2 games. That type of workload against an extremely vulnerable Texans front should give Etienne his first touchdown and top 4 finish since back in week number 9. To start off my 2nd tier, and in at number 5, I have Dalvin Cook, who has historically dominated the Packers, and it's going to be easier than ever to this season. Green Bay is allowing 5.2 yards per carry over their last 3 games. That is 5th most in the NFL, and I know that he has struggled in 2 out of the last 3, but the upside here is more than worth the risk. My next man up is Derrick Henry. He's the only mostly healthy player on Tennessee's offense that can do much of anything, so I expect the King to be fed all day in an effort to keep the ball away from Dallas's explosive offense. He's been a top 10 guy in back-to-back weeks. I think he finds a way to do it once again, one way or another, even in a bottom 4 matchup. At 7, I have James Conner. He's probably the most underappreciated rusher in all of fantasy football. He's got 3 top 6 finishes in his last 4 games, and he has not missed a beat since Kyler Murray went down for the season. Now, something of note, Atlanta has not given up a rushing score over their last 3 games, so there is some concern that he breaks his 6-game scoring streak. However, the passing game work that he garners will more than make up for it. To the top of tier number 3, Joe Mixon is there. He's seen his passing game work spike over the last 2 games, 76 yards on 12 catches, and that has been necessary because Mixon has struggled on the ground in some tough matchups. It's not going to get any easier here against the Bills, but the volume combined with his place in an elite offense always gives Mixon top 10 upside. Alvin Kamara is up next. He recorded his 2nd straight 20 carry day against Cleveland last week. It's the first time all season long he's done that. and in a game where the Saints are going to want to take the air out of the ball and keep the ball away from the Eagles offense, Alvin could make it 3 straight. It only helps that Philly has allowed 4.6 yards per carry over their last 3 games. That is bottom 10 numbers in the league. Next up is David Montgomery. He had a big 20-8 advantage over Khalil Herbert last week in the touch department, so you can be confident starting Monty in a smash matchup with Detroit. You may have heard the Lions just gave up 320 rushing yards and 3 scores against Carolina last week, meaning there is top 5 upside here for Montgomery. To the top of tier 4, and Nick Chubb leads it off, and in my opinion, he cannot possibly be considered a top 10 option with his current cold streak. Chubb has not gotten inside of the top 20 in 4 straight games, but at least the yardage has been there. I think he's fighting an uphill battle against the Commanders, but they have fallen off a little bit against the run as of late. They've allowed 4.8 yards per carry over their last 3. That is 6th highest in the league. Rhamondre Stevenson is the last RB1 that I have in week 17. He was a bigger letdown than anyone could have imagined last week against Cincinnati. He had 15 touches but totaled just 33 yards, and he fumbled the game away to top it all off. I think Stevenson is still an RB1 after his worst game of the season, but Miami has been a top 8 team both in rushing scores and yards per carry allowed over their last 3, so Stevenson carries more risk than we thought possible. My lucky number 13 is also at the top of tier 5. It is Aaron Jones, who has alternated RB1 finishes with middling performances since back in week 8. So after last week's bust, there is reason for optimism. However, the problem is that Jones had 8 total touches last week against the Dolphins. Now, I doubt that Green Bay strays from him 2 weeks in a row, and the Vikings are giving up top 12 numbers to rushers on the season. So I am banking for the trend to continue and Jones to threaten RB1 numbers. Tony Pollard is next. He's at 14. He got absolutely nothing going on the ground against Philly last week, but he had the most receiving yards that he's had since back in week 11, and that work keeps him in the RB2 conversation. I think the Titans are likely to bottle him up on the handoffs, but they will not have an answer for his pass-catching abilities. In at 15, Jerick McKinnon he has caught 18 balls in his last 3 games, and he's also scored in 4 straight. Even though the usage dipped pretty heavily against the Hawks, I think he is a great option against a Broncos squad that just let Cam Akers run rampant on them. Kenneth Walker is my sweet 16. He could not find the end zone for the 3rd straight week, but he used a massive workload to rack up 107 rushing yards in a losing effort to the Chiefs. Now, the Jets are allowing just 3.9 yards per carry over their last 3. That is 7th best in the NFL, so I am buying the volume from Walker here. At the top of tier 6, it is Miles Sanders. He struggled for his 2nd consecutive game against Dallas, using 21 carries to total just 65 yards. The biggest story here, though, is the volume. I'm going to take anything close to that kind of touch count in this offense, and no one is threatening Sanders as the RB1. New Orleans has been much more forgiving on the ground than they have through the air, and with Gardner Minshew once again starting for Philly, I think they lean on the run to take the pressure off the quarterback. Moving on to Cam Akers, who used the best game script possible to destroy Denver. He rumbled for 147 total yards and 3 touchdowns as the number 1 back in week 16. The Chargers are allowing 23 points a game to the position and 5.3 yards per carry on the season. Those are both bottom 8 numbers, so there is plenty of reason to believe that Akers has another big day. Now, the Rams offense obviously inherently carries a ton of risk, but Akers could also help you win your week. To the start of tier 7, it is DeAndre Swift. He will fall if Jamal Williams is active this week, but for now I am projecting Swifty for a solid volume game against one of the worst run defenses in the league. The Bears are bottom 6 in yards per carry, rushing scores, and points allowed to the position, so Swift could hit top 10 numbers easily with a decent amount of looks, and I think he could even touch the top 5 if he can get 18 touches like he did back in week 13. Josh Jacobs rounds out my top 20. He free falls in my rankings due to the terrible matchup here and the fact that he has failed to get inside this range in back-to-back games. No one is tougher on running backs than San Francisco, and after the Raiders basically looks lifeless against Pittsburgh, I have little faith that they can suddenly turn it around against a red-hot 49ers squad. The touches are going to give him a chance, but I am betting it is not enough to warrant anything other than a low-end RB2 finish. To 21, it is Tyler Allgeier. He is the clear RB1 for an Atlanta squad that wants to run as much as possible, and they should find plenty of success doing that against Arizona. The Cardinals are allowing 23.5 points per game to rushers on the year. That is 6th most in the NFL, and they've also allowed 4 rushing scores in their last 3. That is tied for 4th most, so Allgeier has a ton of upside. At 22, it is Brian Robinson Jr., who deserves another shot after last week's dud. Failing against San Francisco was expected, but this matchup here with the Browns is anything but tough. Cleveland is giving up top 3 numbers to backs on the year, and Robinson also has 18 or more carries in 3 out of his last 4. He could crush this ranking if things fall right for him. To the top of tier 8, it is Najee Harris. He did not ball out as expected last week, but he was able to rack up 95 yards of offense on 22 touches. That was his 3rd straight finish in the top 20. Baltimore continues to dominate rushers on the ground, but after the passing game work showed up for Najee against Vegas, I think he finds a way to conjure up plenty of yardage. The last RB2 that I have in week 17 is Leonard Fournette. He has now led the Bucs in rushing in back-to-back weeks, so while he is clearly the inferior back for this offense, he is getting the superior amount of touches. After getting 29 opportunities against Arizona, I am buying the volume in a tough matchup with the Panthers. Carolina allowed just 3.3 yards per carry over the last 3 weeks. That is tied for 2nd in the NFL. At 25, and falling down my rankings, is Ezekiel Elliott. He scored again last week. It's been an impressive run for him. That is 8 straight now where he has crossed the goal line, but I think the streak ends here, and the yardage has not been enough to save him for a while now. When we tack on the fact that Zeke has not had over 20 receiving yards since back in week 4, it is clear that Elliott is nothing more than a flex option against the Titans. To 26 we go. It is J.K. Dobbins, who was shown up by Gus Edwards last week, and Pittsburgh has allowed the 6th fewest yards per carry over their last 3, so there is plenty of reason to be pessimistic here. Dobbins is only making the cut because just a couple of weeks ago, he destroyed these Steelers for 120 yards on 15 carries. Isaiah Pacheco is next. He's at 27. He has failed to crack RB2 territory in 2 straight games. Even though the yardage has been there, the touchdowns have eluded him. He always has a chance at a strong finish because of his usage in this offense. But with Jerick McKinnon siphoning his touchdown upside, Pacheco is going to have to settle for flex consideration. To my 9th tier, A.J. Dillon is at 28. He gets Minnesota. He nearly doubled up Aaron Jones in the carry department last week, and he's also scored in 4 straight games, so he has more upside than most in this range. If he can't score, though, he will almost certainly underwhelm. To 29, it is Devin Singletary. He got inside the top 10 for the 2nd time this season with a massive performance against Chicago. He got over the 100-yard barrier for the first time this season. We're not going to see anything close to that against a brutal Bengals defense, but Singletary has enough touchdown upside in this offense to make him worth a start. To round out my top 30, I have Zack Moss traveling to New York to take on the Giants. He was the clear RB1 for Indy last week, and that fact, plus the fact that the Giants have surrendered a league worst 6.5 yards per carry over their last 3, is enough for him to be considered in your flex. The volume should be there. The only issue is there is a very real chance that Indy's offense never gets going. to 31, and at the top of my final tier, it is Latavius Murray. He fell victim to the ineptitude of Russell Wilson yet again, so even in this plus matchup, he is a risky play in the dumpster fire that is the Denver Broncos offense. Now, if things go right for him, he could easily post a solid day, but more than likely, the outcome here is that he loses the battle to the game script. The last running back that I have in week 17 is Chuba Hubbard. He is my preferred Carolina back because of his usage in the passing game, although it did not show itself last week. I don't think Foreman or Chuba Hubbard are going to be able to find any room to roam on the ground, but I think Hubbard gets some opportunities catching the ball out of the backfield, and he capitalizes on them. Couple running backs who just missed the cut include Donta Foreman traveling to Tampa, Zonovan Knight, who had 6 carries for -2 yards last week, and Rachaad White against Carolina. Jamal Williams, if he comes back and is healthy, will shake up my rankings a little bit. And that is everything I got for today's video. Let me know what you thought about the rankings. Drop your questions and your comments down below. I love the engagement. It is one of the main reasons I do these videos. If you would not mind and you enjoyed the content today, please crush the like button for me and subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss a thing. Make sure you keep an eye out for my updated ranking shorts. Those come out on Saturday. I have those available both on YouTube and on TikTok as well at Relentless Press to get my final thoughts before the games this weekend. Good luck this week, guys. I hope you can go out and take home that championship. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and I'll see you next time.